Today's video is brought to you by SpecOps Password Auditor, the ultimate free tool for Active Directory to help you search, audit and report on known vulnerabilities. Make sure that you download your copy today from specopsoft.com. You know, there's an old saying, in order to move forward, you sometimes need to look backwards. And in this episode, I'm going to take us back and take a look at Microsoft Windows Hyper-V. Hyper-V technology is the framework for every virtual environment running in Microsoft Azure and also on Windows Server. And to understand it is absolutely critical. So if you're ready to learn, best buckle up. This is a busy one. Hey everyone, great to see you. Andy here. I really do appreciate you dropping by. You know, sometimes to move forward, as I said, you need to look backwards. And I've done this before with the likes of Windows Server, Active Directory, Microsoft Exchange. And a couple of weeks ago, I had a couple of emails from folks saying, Andy, could I do a session on Hyper-V? I thought, you know, that's a great idea. Hyper-V is such an important technology to understand, and it's available in both Windows 11 in a kind of minor form, but in Windows Server in a more kind of bigger form. And of course, it's the grounding for all things in Microsoft Azure when it comes to virtualization. Now, knowing this technology and understanding it is so important if you want a job in administration. So in this video, I'm going to take you through everything you need to know in order to get you set up to be able to manage, administer, and troubleshoot Hyper-V. And more importantly, you're going to understand exactly what it is and how it works. Now, if you haven't subscribed, I would love for you to come on board and support the channel. So bump that subscribe button and come on board. And if you've got any questions or comments from this or any of my sessions, just get them down below and I'll do my best for you. I think without any further ado then, I think it's about time we'll jump in and take a look at Hyper-V. Okay, just to set the scene then, I'm going into Server Manager. I'm using Windows Server 2022 at the moment. And in Server Manager, we've actually got a collection of different servers here. So in Server Manager, you can see it shows me what roles I've currently got installed. And if I click onto the All Servers node, you can see that we have 4 or 5 different servers here. Now, to install Hyper-V, really simple. You just click on Manage, and I'm going to add role and feature. So in this case, I'm going to add a role. So just click on Next. So you've got the option of adding a role and feature. You can also choose which server you want to add this on. And for the purpose of this demo, I'm choosing it. So I simply click on Hyper-V Server. I would click Next, and then I would essentially just click Finish. And it would then go off and it would install. Now, you will actually notice that Hyper-V is actually installed on SRV1, which is a core server, but I'm going to be able to manage it on this actual server. So I'm just going to go and open up Hyper-V. So I'm going to click down into Tools and go into Hyper-V Manager. And one of the first things that we're going to want to do, you can see there's nothing really in here at the moment. One of the first things that we're going to want to do, though, is we're going to want to create a network. So over here, you can see that you can edit a disk, you can add disks in, you can create new virtual machines. We have, I'm on the Hyper-V server at the moment, and you can see I've got one server core there at the moment. I can add in a new hard disk, a new virtual machine, and a floppy disk if you want to time travel back to the 90s, but I don't want to do that today. The first thing that you probably want to do, though, is you want to create a new network. So I'm going to create a new network, and you could basically got 3 options. Do you want it to be external, which means it will obviously you can publicly use it? Do you want it to be internal, which means great for kind of testing purposes? And in this case, I'm going to choose one. I'm going to choose a private one just to keep everything internal here, just for testing and training. So once you've chosen that, again, I'm going to say, yeah, I want to create a new network switch, and I'll just change the name and I'll just call this my Contoso private switch. And again, you can see I've already said you could change it, and you can go in any time and you can change these settings as well. So that's not really a problem. So now that I've done that, I'm going to click on next, and off it goes, and click OK, and I've now created my virtual network. So now that I've done that, the next thing you might want to create might be a virtual hard drive. So I'm going to click on hard disk, and I'm going to click on next. And for this, we really have three choices. A VHD is the traditional virtual hard drive, up to 2 gigabytes in size. A VHDX, great, because this can be up to 16 terabytes in size, supports all the security features. And you can also create a VHD set as well. Again, this is if you've got like shared virtual disks, if you want to do that. So I'm going to just, for the purpose of this demo, because I'm working in Hyper-V at the moment, I'm creating a standalone hard drive here. Just to say, by the way, I'm using nested virtualization, which means that if you've got a physical server, you would switch all your machines off, and then you can enable nested Hyper-V and then switch it back on again. So this now allows me to do this. So what type of disk? Do I want a fixed disk? Do I want a dynamically expanding disk, which means it'll just grow as I need? And the other one is a differencing disk. This is great for training because it takes snapshots and you can go back and test things. So now that we've done this, obviously give the disk a name and again select a location. So I'm just putting this in my disk drive, on my C drive rather, and I'm just going to click on next. Then again, just double check the location. Again, I'm just putting this in my C drive, and you can see that I'm just putting it into the base image here. So now that I've done that, everything looks good. I'm going to click on finish. So now that we've created our network card, we've created our disk, the next thing you obviously want to create is a new virtual machine. So we can create a new virtual machine, and again, you've got a number of options, different options here on how to create that VM. Okay, so I'm going to click on next to get things moving, and it's first thing it's going to ask you is where do you want to store the virtual machine? So the first thing I'm going to do, of course, is I'm going to give it a name. Do you want to store it just in the default location, or do you want to store it in the same, just the kind of the default My Program files? You would typically choose a different location for this, I think. So again, I'm just going to put in that, and then once you've chosen the location, I'm just going to click on next. So I'm just putting everything in there. Now it talks about the types of virtual machine, or the generation. So generation 1 is a traditional 32 to 64-bit machine, and you can use this in all reason, for all purposes. Generation 2 is kind of next generation. It uses UEFI boot, firmware, 64-bit guests are only available here. Please note that once you've created it, you can't change the generation of machine. Then it says, okay, how much memory you want. You can also use dynamic memory here as well for the VM. And basically that will, if it needs more than 4 gigabytes, it will use more just dynamically. Then it asks, okay, which network? I chose the private network. And then again, do you want to create a new virtual hard drive? Do you want to use an existing one or attach a disk later? So in this case, you can see I've attached my Seattle-based disk there. So I click on next, get a nice overview, and again, just click on finish. And there we go. I've now created a virtual machine. Okay, so now that our machine has come in, now we can explore. So as you can see at the moment, I've got a couple of virtual machines. So here is my Seattle machine, and you'll notice that when I select it, the menu expands because it's context sensitive. Whereas if I deselect it, you'll now see that the menu options are different. So if I'm just going to come over to the actual server itself, and again, you've got a few options here. You can, if I go into the Hyper-V settings, this will give me all the kind of those default locations that I mentioned. So things like virtual hard disks, virtual networks, things like if I want to do what we call a live migration. Live migration is great if you've got a physical machine and you want to migrate it into Hyper-V. That can be useful, and I'll maybe cover that in later episodes actually. Again, if you want to migrate storage across here, again, there are session policies that you can enable, kind of setting default keyboard, all those kind of input options there. You can enable those here. Again, you can go into Hyper-V settings. You can go into Virtual Switch Manager. So Virtual Switch Manager is the virtual networking. And we also have the storage area network manager as well. So if you've got multiple hard drives, multiple bits of storage here and so on. So, and you can see there's that screen again. So the virtual switch manager, it shows me my virtual switches that I've got here. As opposed to virtual network cards. That's just what Microsoft calls them. And again, you've also got things like the SAN, the Storage Area Network Manager. So again, you can bring in disks, you can create new disks here as well. And again, you can create shared storage there if you want to do that. So now that I've created my virtual machine, again, I can do a number of things with it. You can either go through the menu here, or I can just right click it. Again, I'm going to now start this machine up. So it just takes a few minutes to start. You can see you get a little preview at the bottom here, and it also shows you kind of how many resources you've got, how much memory it's using, what networking tab there it's got, and again, if you've set what we call replication. So one of the cool things is, of course, is in a live environment, redundancy is important. So if you've got multiple servers, then you can obviously replicate that to another server for backup reasons. So you can see that now that we've selected this disk, again, I've got a selection of menu options here. So again, I can connect to it. I can view those settings. I can turn the machine off. I can shut down the machine. I can save it, which will take a snapshot, of course. And there's those checkpoints that will appear. Again, I can reset the VM. I can move it, export it out, and so on. So I'm going to say, yeah, I want to connect to this virtual machine, and off it goes, and it fires up the connection. And in this case, you can see this is a server core installation, and it says, okay, you need to do Control-Alt-Delete. So we can find those same buttons either here, again, or many of them down the left-hand side there. So I'm just going to do that, and I'm going to say, yeah, I want to put in my password. Off it goes. And you can now see that we are now logged in to that virtual machine. So I can then say I want to turn this machine off. I want to shut down the virtual machine. Just a point in production environment. It's not good practice to just switch off a VM. It could do damage, of course, but typically you want to shut down the machine in a controlled way. You want to save the machine. Again, I can pause it. If I just want to pause it, I can reset the VM here. You can create a snapshot or a checkpoint, which are always quite useful. So I can just call this checkpoint 1, for example, and this is quite useful for training purposes. So you can always roll back to that kind of previous version. We also have, again, in the, you can see there we go, it's now been created, so that's cool. So if I just close down this VM, you'll notice I've closed down the portal. Oh, I opened another one as well, there we go. Just exit that just now. But you can see that this virtual machine is still running. So if you're using, for example, Azure virtual machines, then this is very, very similar. This is essentially what's going on, albeit in a much bigger kind of scenario in Azure, of course. But the principles are very much the same here. So it's showing you how much memory it's actually being used, how much processing time it's being used there as well. And again, if I want to turn off this machine or shut this machine down, again, I can click on shutdown here, and you'll see that off it goes and it shuts that down. So a couple of other things that you might want to do with a virtual machine. You might want to For example, if you create a basic virtual machine and you want to install Windows on it or something like that, for example. So you'll notice that the virtual machine that we've got, if I just go into my settings here, you can see that it shows you all the different settings, and you can see that I've created that snapshot. So at any point, I can roll back and connect back to that snapshot. And that can be really, really useful for not only redundancy or disaster recovery reasons, but also to general troubleshooting as well. So coming in back into here, you can see you've got the BIOS, you've got the what kind of BIOS is it? So you see what the startup order, for example, CD if you want to travel back to the 90s and use an ISO image, for example, to install Windows or something like that. Then you've got the security options here. So again, you can add a key storage. So key, of course, is all your security. Memory that we looked at earlier, because we're using dynamic memory, means that it's just going to use a minimum of 512 megabytes of RAM, but in essence it's going to use ultimately what it's got. So again, it's dynamic, or unless you want it to be just fixed, you can see that that's fixed. So enabling dynamic memory can be quite useful. The memory weight, so you can specify how to prioritize the availability of memory to this virtual machine. So are you going to prioritize it to the VM, to the hardware? How are you going to do that? The processor, so at the moment we've got a number of processors. Now you'll notice that this virtual machine is currently switched off. So one of the nice things about Hyper-V is you can dynamically add more, remove features as well. The disks, so you can see that we've got just one disk on here that we created earlier, that virtual hard disk, but of course you can create other disks as well. One of the things I really like about Hyper-V is the fact that you can actually have this physical hard disk as well. And sometimes this is referred to as a pass-through disk, and a pass-through disk basically allows you to connect to a physical hard drive or a physical USB drive or something like that. So you can see that we've got the DVD drive. So if you're using, for example, an ISO image of Windows or another operating system, you can browse for that here, and that will then make that image available. So when that machine starts, it will go off and it will then start installing Windows or Linux or whatever you're installing on it. Then we've got the network adapters here. So again, here's our private switch. Again, at any time you want to change, you can change that quite easily if you want to. I really like that. VLAN, so virtual local area network. So again, you can, if you are running a VLAN, you can enable that. Again, VLANs are quite useful for segmenting networks. Do you want to enable kind of bandwidth management? So do you want to kind of limit the bandwidth so you can put a maximum and a minimum weight there if you want to? COM ports, of course, if you're still using them. Diskette drive, I really doubt you'll be using that unless you travel with Doc and Marty back to the future. Then you've got things like integration services here. So again, how rich do you want the virtual machine to be? So again, these are some options that you can set up. Again, so you've got checkpoints. So what kind of checkpoints? I'm enabling checkpoints. And you can either enable them in a production environment, which you probably would, or do you just want to do kind of standard checkpoints as well? And again, you can choose where you want to store those checkpoints. Paging files. So paging, of course, is where if there's not enough memory on a machine, it will use hard drive, a hard disk, as potential paging files. So again, you can set that location. Do you want to set an automatic start action on the VM? So what do you want to do? Do you do nothing? And again, you've also got those automatic stop options there as well. So again, just the basic options. And again, this is relating to this particular virtual machine there. Okay. Now, the other thing that I would highly recommend is you can also have what we call VMM, Virtual Machine Manager. This is System Center Virtual Machine Manager. It's been out for many, many years, and it allows you to manage multiple Hyper-V servers, if you will. And not just Hyper-V, but it also manages things like Linux and if you've got, third-party ones as well, VMware and so on. Okay, so there you go. That is really just a very, very simple guide at getting started in Hyper-V. So there you have it. Hyper-V, so important for admins, both on premises as well as in the cloud, that you understand that tech. Hey, listen, I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give me a big thumbs up. It really does help the channel. And if you've got any questions, you know the drill. Get those down below and I will always do my best for you. That's it for this time. Thanks very much for joining me, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Hey, thanks so much for dropping by today. Here's a couple of videos that you may enjoy, and while you're here, go ahead, click on the subscribe button and you won't miss out.